Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, basically. Okay, so we will try to entertain you a little bit with the discussion about the 5G technology. We will cover a few important things. Before we start, I also encourage you to post your questions using the Slido app. So I'll have access here, and I will also pick a few of the questions, and I will ask them either during or after the subjects that we will discuss today. So maybe let's start with the session. So there's a lot going on about the 5G technology, a lot of discussion, a lot about the technical aspects. But before we try to cover this during the session, guys, what are the three top things that the ordinary user should know about the upcoming 5G technology? Some basics, something that is really the key here. Okay, Artur.
Oh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Works.
So
Still.
when 5G was, let's say, introduced or was planned, there were three main topics that were covered by a standardization body. The one was this broadband, which we know, yes, and that's how we typically meet the technology, the telecommunications, that we have a more video streaming, we have a better quality of voice, better quality of service. And that's one promise of the 5G. But there are two others that are mostly unknown if we look at the press releases and so on. The one is that we envision a world where there is a lot of things that are communicating, and we know under this name Internet of Things, but current networks were not facilitating this technology well enough, and I think that's a part of the promise of the 5G, that it will be easier to do it, and we will have a platform to deploy this Internet of Things as something real. And the last thing that was also covered by this standardization bodies was this ultra-fast communication that will enable a new application that currently we know from the wired world. So, for example, the machinery that will work, that in real time will communicate with the servers or machine to machine and things like that. So it will also somehow shape the way the people are manufacturing, the way the people are organizing transportation and things like that.
Okay, Wojtek, would you like to add some use cases you see?
Well, Artur covered most part of it. However, there's a lot of things beneath. So there's a lot of things of how this is going to be done. So in terms of radio, we pretty much know what it is, and it's, in a way, it's not much different than LTE or what we have today. But there's a very big change to the core network side, or the the backbone side of the network. So all the techniques of virtualization, basically cloud, cloud edge, cloud computing, all of those items will be of very, very big importance. And that makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, if we're talking about applications with short latencies, you cannot talk about, transferring data from other side of the world. You have to have it local.
Okay, Jacek, would you add something?
Yes, I would like to add something about this core network at the very beginning, because what we have already in the LTE, the core network is oriented into one service only, which is actually data transmission. That's it. And what is the biggest difference in 5G, that this core network will be service-oriented, which means many service-oriented. So for example, if we have the IoT device, we do not have to load all of the mobility aspects of this IoT device, because it is not moving. So this is the key difference. We can dedicate we can load a dedicated parts of the core network into dedicated service. This enables us a lot of. Another thing is latency, which is said. It is extremely important because many services require slower latency. So this is the second aspect. And the third aspect is the cloudification. What Wojtek said is that we are going to have distributed cloud, because cloud, what is cloud? Cloud is something which is located nobody knows where. And the important thing in the distributed cloud, in the 5G network, is that this cloud will be distributed, which means that the part of the cloud will be also located very close to the customer. So we will be able to achieve the processing power achieved very easily and with the very short latency, because it is located very close to us.
So you're talking you're talking about the mobile edge computing and stuff like this for the 5G.
This is something which was not visible in the 4G at that moment. And of course, talking about the IoT, because we have IoT in the LTE, and this is well known. The difference in case of 5G is this word massive IoT. So this is the strong things. This is the strong.
Okay, so Artur, what do you think about the massive IoT? What is the difference between the ordinary and the massive IoT concept here?
Yeah, so to some extent, IoT was kind of implanted into 4G. So it was not originally designed to support this technology, but at some point, when this concept was mature enough, people started to work how to enable IoT in this 4G. And if someone will look how this technology is really realized, he will soon one will soon discover that it's kind of a hack. Let's call it that way, maybe. And this lesson was well understood by 3GPP, and now we have let's say many improvements in two areas. The one area is this radio interface that will support the devices that will not have to be charged for I don't know, years. There will be thousands of them, and they will have to communicate through basically the same radio channels that, or part of the radio spectrum that is assigned to operators. At the other side, there is also a possibility to easy plug-in services that will allow to somehow handle this this traffic from the or build application upon the network to somehow make something usable out of IoT.
Okay, so what can we basically expect out of this all? So how do you think the world will change with the worldwide adoption of the 5G technology that is basically waiting out there to appear, to be brought into our lives? Wojtek?
Are you asking about the services that are
I'm
going?
more asking
new
about the use
services or
cases. Yeah.
use
So
cases?
how will the use cases look like? What will be possible with the 5G that wasn't so much possible with the 4G technology?
Okay, so, well, there's a lot of different use cases, and we can play science fiction as long as we want, right? I mean, we can talk about it for hours. Some cases might be, I don't know, connected autonomous cars, right? That's a very often thing that we talk about.
You mean the self-driving Teslas or something?
Well, if Tesla company says that a car is able of driving by itself, then Nokia company says that an autonomous car is as wise as it is in front of it, but
True.
if the cars are connected between each other, you can communicate what happens 3 cars ahead, and then you're much wiser on the road, and you can adapt and react to situation on the road much faster and in more agile way. That's one use case. Another one, which is really interesting, is something that we started mentioning here, is the use case of, for example, wireless factories. If you imagine a big factory that has all the sensors and all the actuators connected via cables, now if all of that is exchanged for wireless communication, then for example it opens a lot of possibilities, for example, to reframe a factory overnight. And so maybe production of things will be much cheaper and much easier to reframe and adapt to different situations, so it will be easier to run business with it, right? I don't know, guys, you want any more cases? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, for me, it's important that having this technology, which enables us the broadband, which enables us the very short latency and edge computing, it basically means that we are having a platform on which we can deploy any services. Like, for example, like Android. Yes, we have the operating system on the mobile phone, and you can see how many applications are already available in the Android or iOS, whatever. And I think that the very similar way can be done in case of 5G, because we are going to have some kind of platform. So the only limitation here is the imagination of the service providers at that moment. And because we are going to have this massive IoT plus very wide broadband plus very short latency, we have a lot of possibilities. And this is I don't want to talk about some specific use cases because it's gonna be very narrow. But I think that this is the most important, this platform which enable us to build any kind of services in the future.
Okay, Artur, Wojtek? Yeah.
Maybe one word. Okay, so there is also one aspect that there's a lot of flexibility in how you can configure the network and how you can change it into something else. So I think it will change a little bit the way this business of selling the telecommunication is performed. But also, there are some challenges like, I don't know, critical situations and so on, when we suddenly have to make this infrastructure to work in a completely different way. And one of the promises of 5G is that in the click, maybe click is too much or too
little.
Yeah. But in a 3 clicks you can turn it into something different that will serve, for example, for a public services to help I don't know, save people's life and so on, and then go back to the normal mode of operation and things like that.
Yeah. But I guess it was also one of the purposes for the 5G when it all started, to cover one of the functional gaps. For example, we have the public safety networks, we have the public safety systems, and it wasn't very well addressed by the 2G. It wasn't addressed at all with the 3G and 4G, most likely also not. But it was also one of those pillars for the 5G to try to close this functional gap and maybe bring this public safety systems to the next level, because it was like lacking this technology pretty much, right? Wojtek?
Well, but the first question here does not lie in the vendors, in the creators of the technology.
Right.
This actually lies rather in the hands of regulators like FCC, ETSI, Urząd Komunikacji Elektronicznej, and so on, right? That it basically depends on how we share our spectrum, because, for example, in Germany, the German regulatory body already reserved a part of bandwidth for public use cases, or maybe for municipal applications, or those kind of things. Again, 5G is trying to address those kind of things also by unlicensed access or things like that, but that's maybe 2 steps ahead still, right?
I was more thinking about the direct communication mode, for example. So, like you said, it would be possible to communicate between cars, but there is also a couple of additions to the standard. But maybe they are not yet finalized, but it's popping up in the standard that they also want to address cases like the direct communication between mobiles that will also like enable some kind of solutions for public safety and at the end, because that's like how those systems are made. That's how they are designed. Artur?
Yeah, so one thing I wanted to emphasize is that 4G was known under the name LTE, long-term evolution, and now we have a 5G. But if you really look at it, it was really something that was prepared by a 4G, yes? So it's evolution. Someone who knows, someone who works inside knows that how the things evolved. So I think the people really prepared, you know, that this lesson was learned, yes? So what we did wrong in the past, but we had the system open enough to correct this, you know, in an evolutionary way.
So how about still like very popular things like the smart city concepts? Do you think that the 5G will also help with the use cases for example, for smart city or cases like this? Will it bring it to the next level? Maybe Jacek?
Definitely yes. But when we come back a little bit in the history, like 2 years ago, when we had the very strong push into IoT, when the NB-IoT was getting mature and so on, so there was a strong push into smart city and so on. We haven't seen that. I mean, we know that this exists, but it was not so much popular. Maybe because now NB-IoT was not popular so much, but probably in case of 5G, it's going to be easier, and we hope that it will change it. I mean, and this kind of services will be available. But coming back to your previous question, I would like to add something about this convergence, because one of the key aspects of 5G is the convergence of all of the network services. For example, when the LTE was introduced, before LTE we had something like WiMAX. WiMAX doesn't exist actually anymore. Yes, now we are having 5G. So there is a trend to, for example, remove Wi-Fi from the.
True.
I don't believe that it will happen, but there is a push with this technology like multifier or whatever it is. So maybe this is another aspect of this convergence, because it's going to be possible to have your own cell in your home, especially when you're using higher frequencies, when the attenuation is high. Maybe there won't be a need to have two different technology in your mobile phone, Wi-Fi and
True,
5G.
it wouldn't go beyond the walls, but that's actually exactly the advantage here, because we can take a look at the Wi-Fi, how it's working right now. That in every house we can just scan for thousands of networks and we can see all the neighbors. So this will actually be a little bit of advantage, not to have
But
this
for example,
crowd there.
if you switch into 5 gigahertz of Wi-Fi, you don't see anything.
Well, I do, but it's still better than
this is how it
yeah.
this is how it's gonna be here.
Yeah, true. Okay, guys. So, how about maybe the new business opportunities that come with the 5G? Some kind of startups, something. Do you see the advantage here for like using the new technology to make your own startup? Will it be easier for such people? Will it be possible to develop the new solutions like this? Artur?
Okay, so again, there are two aspects of it. One is that I think it was the idea behind some of the decisions that 3GPP made, that there will be some kind of diversification of providers of core infrastructure and so on. These interfaces are much more open, basing on much more standardized and popular technologies like HTTP and so on. Yes, so this backbone or core network and services behind. So that's the one opportunity, that you can be provider, or there will be some open source solutions that may appear to to work in the core network. And the other is that there is, of course, some gate open, which allows you to plug in some application. And we've mentioned this idea of platform. Yes, so it's now we still don't know if it will work as expected, because it's just the beginning of this technology. But the hope is that suddenly there will appear a lot of services that for which 5G is a platform, but at the other hand, it's something created by entrepreneurs and as mobile application now.
Yep, we took.
So on one side we have like small startups and all the IoT applications that you might come up with, that you actually could be trying them out with 4G already. Of course, 4G proves a bit too bulky, a bit too expensive, a bit too energy consuming to do it, but it's still some kind of way to prove concept, right? Then we hope that 5G opens up all new applications, new ways of doing IoT and so on. But one important aspect that I see is that it might very seriously undermine all the big players, or at least the big players like mobile operators in first place.
The telecom companies that are like holding this all.
There is a big fear that telecom companies will be in serious trouble, and well, their market is very hard even today, and it's not going to be any easier. It's not going to be any lighter for them. And also the same goes for companies like our companies like Nokia, Ericsson and so on, because if you have open network access protocol or open radio access network, and you can put any kind of your own software on the edge cloud and run your own kind of service, networking service, then you basically can cut out Nokia from their own business, from their software making business in a way. Of course, this won't be easy, but not impossible. And today with 4G, it is impossible. And the idea around 5G is to open that up for other players as well.
Yeah, that's the risk that is associated with opening interfaces. So it wasn't possible that time, but yes. So Jacek, would you add something?
Yes, the important thing is that we are not only opening the software interfaces, but also hardware. For example, ORAN. So basically, there will be open interface between the radio modules and the baseband. So this is also the risk. So for example, it will be possible to buy a baseband from Ericsson and radio from Nokia. Right. So to be honest, I don't fully believe in that, because many services and many features depends on two parts of the.
There are custom solutions that are assuming some availability of technology.
Nevertheless, this is happening, and there is a very strong push into it. So we are opening everything, and yes, as you said, it can be risky. It can be risky. I hope it's not gonna be risky for the operators, because they are our main customers. So let's hope the best for them.
You can find new customers with a small player.
Yeah. Okay, well, that all looks very impressive. But how will this technology, in your opinion, how will it develop further? Because right now we have like a shortage of devices. So everyone heard about the 5G, but no one really seen it working. Well, we did, but we are working like for telecom companies. Yeah, some people here too, but the ordinary Kowalski haven't seen it yet in the practice. It's not as easy as just grabbing your phone and having it. The experience there. So how do you think this will develop? Maybe Jacek, if you have
it is starting already. For example, when you look in South Korea, you can see that there are 3 operators there, and all of them commercially launched the 5G networks. So there are the network equipment is ready. We have devices. We have a couple of chips for devices, like for Qualcomm and other vendors. So this is happening. This is happening right now. it is starting. This is launching. I mean, in Poland it's gonna be a little bit different, but not because of the lack of equipment, but because of lack of the band, the lack of the problem with electromagnetic waves, in case of very strong norms. So this is gonna be stopping that, but we're seeing it that this is.
But it's also about the availability of the frequencies, right? In general,
Exactly,
so there is this problem that we need to have like a common level agreement between many countries to have similar frequencies available here and there. Otherwise, we will run into the same problems we once did with the 3G or 4G in the very beginning, where we had the phone and we traveled to the States and there was no LTE suddenly, right? Even though our phone was fully capable, but there was nothing in those frequencies that could make it work.
I mean, in the case of Europe and America, it's gonna be probably very the same, because they are always different. Yeah, so they will always choose a different bands. I don't believe that they agree, and probably that the problem will still exist, but we never know. Maybe not in case of 5G, but it's not because of the technology. It's because of politicians. So I wouldn't, bet for them.
Yeah, politics is another thing. So Artur, would you add something? What's your opinion on how this will develop?
Yeah. So again, this example of the South Korea, and to put it in numbers, I've just today read the estimate that they are going to have 5 million subscribers till the end of the year. Yeah. So currently that 3 million is already subscribing these services. So it's started, and from what I hear, and I'm not working directly in this area, but from I hear the operators are interested much more than they were initially interested in 4G. So looking at this, we can predict that this time to market will be even higher than it was for 4G, which was quite impressive, at least. That was my opinion.
Right. Okay, so maybe I'll just ask a question from the audience. We have a question for Poland in practice. So in a small country, rather small country, maybe not so small, like Poland, is it better to build 4 separate 5G networks, one for each operator, or just a single network that will be shared among the operators? Who would you... Okay, Jacek.
It depends on the perspective. From the vendor point of view, it's better to build the 4 networks, of course. From the operator's point of view, it's better to build one. Yeah?
So 4 networks mean 4 times more equipment, because you have to build it from scratch again and again and again.
Exactly. In case of 5G, it's a little bit easier. I mean, the upgrade from LTE to 5G is easier than the upgrade from 3G to LTE. Because from the radio point of view, this technology is very similar. So, for example, in case of Ericsson, the software upgrade is enough. All of the equipment which was sold like in 2015, it's ready for this upgrade. Yes. So it is easier. But answering to this question is it depends on the model, and probably I believe that in case of Poland, at least 2 operators will cooperate with each other and build their own network, like it is, for example, in case of LTE. So this is going to happen. I don't believe that there's going to be one network for all of the 4 operators. This is not possible. Right. But I believe that there will be some connections, some cooperations with the operators.
Okay, excellent. The next question from the audience: how 5G will resolve problems with latency? So we've been talking a lot about the much shorter latency times here. So how will it resolve the problems with latency? How to prevent bottlenecks if we have to handle millions of clients which communicate with each other over huge speed and SLA with 90% confidence? Wojciech?
Well, as we said before, you need to completely rebuild your core network, right? I mean, that's not going to be easy or cheap, but that's probably how it should fly in the future. And well, so basically, once again, you go to all the concept of the edge cloud, right? And one of the advantages of the edge cloud that we advertise it, or that we know that it's a big advantage, is the scalability of it, right? So you can build the same kind of base station in a big city and scale it up, and then build a very similar solution and scale it down for some more rural place, right? Yes.
Okay.
I guess
Artur, would you like to add something?
Yeah, so there is a couple of improvement in the this physical transmission layer. That, for example, the time, this what we call TTI, yes, the time to transmit, transmission time interval, may be shortened much in this case. There is you can elastically form this TDD signal, so you can use you can use a finer granularity of how you emitting and receiving signal. There are some improvements in this area of Mac to let's say improve the response, the latency, and so on. There is a lot of things like that, and this also one thing that should be mentioned here, I think, is we assume a densification of network. Yes, so this idea of small cell that was already present in 3G, then in the 4G, in a 5G also, because we are moving to a millimeter wave, will be
or centimeter waves. Yeah, well, both are supported actually.
Yeah, so it should improve also the availability of the service, because there instead of single base station that will have to handle thousands of user equipment, there will be a lot of small stations, so it will be easier to get to the network, and then thanks to this edge computing, you will not have to go too far into the core network to process your data. Yes, so there is a lot of improvements in the design of the network itself to facilitate this low latency.
Excellent. Okay, so next question from the audience. 5G is almost ready. Do you have some insight to share related to the 6G design or development? That's going to be a tough one.
Okay, but maybe, so I will take for a moment, because it's a fascinating topic, yes? But
yeah.
Basically, so I think whatever you think you hear or read about new technology now, so this quantum computing, the artificial intelligence, the metamaterials, and so on, probably will appear in the 6G or 7G. It depends on how quickly these things will advance. So I expect that this technology will be marvelous. So so I'm looking forward to 6G really.
Yeah, Jacek?
I was wondering what the 6G will be. I don't know at that moment, because as you said, the 5G hasn't launched already. So it's gonna be. It's a hard question. Yeah, this is hard. Yeah.
It's probably going to contain all the features that didn't make it to the 5G for sure. Then we will add a couple of extensions, and we will probably improve something that's going to be called 6G. Yeah.
Terahertz, it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be hard. I mean, taking this seriously is what I think is that based on what we will learn on the 5G example, because we will learn something, yes, because this is just taking off at that moment. There will be some drawbacks of it, and probably the 6G will be the corrections of these drawbacks. And this is the very first thing. The second things, we will see what will be the needs, because we don't know it yet. The traffic will grow. What kind of traffic will grow? If this massive IoT will be really required, do we need to update it somehow, or maybe there will be a request for different services which cannot be served on this 5G network yet? We don't know yet, but I mean, probably there are some work already on the 6G started, but in 3, 4, maybe 5 years, we will know much more than today.
Okay, so let's go back to the 5G for now, since that's actually the topic of the discussion here. Okay, so how about the safety aspects of the 5G? Is it safe? Is it not safe? Can I sleep still during the night having my 5G phone next to me? Or
Is 4G safe?
I think so. I'm sleeping quite well, but
So
not sure about the others.
So if 4G is safe, and if all the previous technologies that we're using for the last, 20, 30 years, something like that, if they weren't safe, we probably would see something by now. I mean, we probably would be able to prove by now that it is unsafe, okay? Of course, there are some aspects like the millimeter wave, which is the higher frequency and so on, which is a bit of an unknown. But in general, the influence of the RF on human beings or on living beings is pretty well studied, because it was studied for many years now, and we can't prove that it's definitely harmful. We can't prove that it's 100% safe, so it is a bit of a gray zone. I mean, there are some slight chances that you might have some health problems due to 5G, but in the same time, I will argue that there are many different things that will cause you more serious health troubles, like, I don't know, diet, style of living, air pollution, stress, traffic, whatever else, right? You guys?
Okay, Jacek, would you add?
Actually, when we look at the 5G radio, we have done a lot. We have really done a lot to make it safer than 4G from the protocol point of view. For example, the cell is not transmitting cell reference signals all the time. It is quiet if it's not used. This is the first thing. The second thing is that we are using beamforming, which basically means that if we are having more antennas, we can direct the beam directly to the client instead of transmitting it everywhere. So it is actually safer than that in the case of typical LTE with 2 antennas or 4, doesn't really matter, without beamforming. So this is the second step. Okay, there is a question about the millimeter waves. But from the other hand, if we are going to use millimeter waves, we are going to use it only in the small cells, because it's not possible to transmit it on the huge distance. If you are closer to the base station, basically means that you don't need to transfer with so much power. And in the uplink, what we expect is that we are not going to use very short waves. In the uplink, probably we'll use higher frequencies with lower power. So this is the third example that this technology is going to be. I mean, I don't know if it's going to be safer, but this is something that is proving that we've done as a standardization a lot of in order to make it safer than 4G. So it is not that we are just making a new technology and we are free of doing anything, but we are also taking care of it. But coming back to the millimeter waves, this is not because we want to have the millimeter waves. We just need a more spectrum. In order to deliver all of these services, we need to have more spectrum. There is no spectrum in the frequency range 1, which is sub 6 gigahertz. We just need higher frequency to have this spectrum. So
yeah, but if we compare, for example, this to the Wi-Fi example, so we have Wi-Fi's everywhere, in home, in the office. There are thousands of networks, and all of those networks are transmitting all the time, right? So of course they are using like lower frequencies typically than what we aim to at the 5G, but in terms of the transmitting power, we will also be using lower power, right? Because it will not travel beyond walls anyway, regardless of the power that you apply. That's not going to work. So there are many small cells deployed with the same. Can we somehow have this like comparison? Is that going to be the case that the 5G could be safer actually than Wi-Fi in terms of the pollution of the.
In my opinion, yes. In my
Yeah.
opinion, yes, it should be safer. And of course, we have different sources of electromagnetic wave with
Yeah.
which much higher power. For example, 3,000 watts, what we have in the kitchen. Yes, if you
Right.
use induction. So this is something which is generating a lot of, and nobody is talking about it. I don't understand why. This is a question.
Yeah. Okay, Artur, would you add something? Or-
Okay, maybe the one thing is that if I wouldn't be surprised if it appears that, for example, 4G was harmful because people are texting during the driving or so, and there is a lot of car accidents, and so the effect is much stronger than whatever you can imagine from radiation. So the same thing with the 5G, I think, at this moment.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I think we reached the time now. So thanks again for the attention and for your participation, guys. That was a great discussion.
Thank you very, very much. Thanks to Jacek, to Artur, Wojciech, and Konrad.